Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hearn Strikes Back, daily boxing news. We got some boxing to talk about this morning, this afternoon, this evening, all right? Shout out to everyone in the live chat. We got Crassus, Star Fox, Philip Answer, Mark Hatch, Julius, RS3, KO Talk, Tony Lyons, Wave, Truth Channel, FIFA Jr., Connor, Sean Barker, Ben Oldham, big up Ben Oldham, KD versus the world. Did I say Mark Hatch already? Shout out to everyone locked in. So, obviously we're going to talk about the Carl Froch, Johnny Partridge, aka John Fury situation. But we're also going to talk about Eddie Hearn versus Dana White, because that particular rivalry is heating up a little bit. Eddie Hearn threw some barbs out there, let's say a few months ago. Dana White didn't really respond at the time, but he's responded now. So we can discuss that. There's also the rematch between Lee Wood and Josh Warrington taking place this weekend, and various other boxing topics, but those are the main three we're going to cover in this stream. Big up Ricky Red, easy now. Johnny Gaffer, what's happening? We got Sods Capo, Hyper Spaz, what's up, what's up? Shout out to EJ. So let's get straight into it. I'm going to talk about the Dana White Eddie Hearn situation first, because I've got a lot to say on this. Now, Dana White came out and said that he's finding it easier in boxing than he expected. He said it's like beating up babies. Now, Eddie Hearn has responded to this by saying that Dana White's first few shows have been rubbish in boxing. He used the example of F.A. Jagbar versus Charles Martin headlining and said that if he'd put a show on like that, he would have got absolutely ripped to shreds by the public. But is that actually true? Well, he put on Dave Allen versus Johnny Fisher 2. That was a headliner. And those are two fighters who are lower in level than F.A. Jagbar and Charles Martin. So that right there is problematic. And here's the thing, right? I have never been a big Dana White fan as far as his ethics. I've always been very critical of the way he treats UFC fighters and concerned about him trying to implement something similar in boxing. I've also said that UFC, as great a business as it is, and as much upside as it has, there is a certain degree of smoke and mirrors with that organization, creating the perception among most MMA fans that the UFC champion is the undisputed champion. They literally call them that. But hang on, there are loads of other MMA promotion companies that have their own championships. In order to be undisputed, you would have to allow cross-promotion fights to unify all those belts. But of course, UFC don't engage in that. So they've managed to gaslight their fans into thinking the UFC champion is the undisputed champion by virtue of the perception that they've got the pick of the bunch and the only fighters that end up in Bellator. Is Bellator still going on? Didn't UFC buy out Bellator? Is it something else now? I'm not sure. But anyway, the perception that, well, Bellator and these other organizations are just full of ex-UFC guys who can't kite anymore, or guys who are on the way up, etc., etc. But when Francis Ngannou left UFC, he left at the top. He left to go and be in PFL. That's an example of somebody no longer with UFC who conceivably could beat whichever current UFC champion, right? And boxing has shown us over the decades and centuries that even if you put a guy who is a big underdog in there against the champion, upsets happen. So this idea that no UFC champion could ever lose to a Bellator or a PFL guy, all this kind of stuff, it's BS. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors from Dana White. So anyway, long story short, as critical as I've been of Dana White over the years, I'm going to say that I totally disagree with the narrative that Eddie Hearn's pushing out there, the narrative that Paulie Malignaggi's pushing out there. Folks, Paulie Malignaggi works for Boxing Scene. Boxing Scene, the guy that owns that now, has his own promotional company. And so, of course, Paulie Malignaggi is going to downplay the first few Zufa boxing events because he's literally in direct competition with him. I'm not part of Zufa boxing. I'm not part of, I forget the name of the company now, but the guy who owns Boxing Scene the company that he has. I'm not part of them, obviously. I'm not part of any boxing promotional company. I'm just a boxing fan, all right? Objectively speaking, Dana White's last two shows, Zufa Boxing, were highly entertaining. And the reason that I think he might be onto something here, and that he might be a bigger factor in boxing than I first suspected, is because he's taken a bunch of fighters who are not top tier in professional boxing, and he's managed to match them together in such a way as to produce very entertaining fights, dramatic fights. That shows an ability when it comes to matchmaking, which is very, very good. Now, I'm not sure that it's Dana White doing the actual matchmaking. I suspect it's not. They have other matchmakers who are more specialized in boxing. But whatever the case may be, the matchmaking was good as far as producing entertaining fights, spectacular knockouts. Now, the last show, some people were saying, well, it was a bunch of one-sided fights. I think there was only really one fight on there that I watched anyway that was one-sided. The rest of them were competitive. Even the main event between Ajagba and Charles Martin, folks, as short as it was, that was a competitive fight. Charles Martin came out fast and he won the first couple of rounds. To my eye, he buzzed F.A. Ajagba maybe twice. So it was a competitive fight as short as it was. It's like looking at Marvin Hagler versus Tommy Hearns and saying, well, it ended in a knockout for Hagler in 3 rounds, therefore it was a mismatch. No. It was highly competitive as long as it lasted. People still talk about that as being one of the most exciting fights of all time. A fight doesn't have to go 12 rounds, okay, for it to deliver excitement. And so, as I say, Dana White took a small pool of fighters, some of whom are ex-champions, fringe contenders, rising contenders and whatnot. He took a limited pool of fighters for his last 2 shows, and he managed to deliver entertainment, drama, right? That's skill as far as the matchmaking goes. So all this stuff about the fights were low level, this, that, and the other, that's why Eddie Hearn needs to worry. If Dana White can do this with low level fighters, imagine what he can do when he gets some real talent in there. That's the point. And on top of that, he's got an enormous budget from Paramount, Turkey Al Sheikh, Nick Khan and whatnot. And he's putting on this insane schedule where they're basically doing a card every weekend. The strategy seems to be to flood the market in order to, as quickly as possible, establish the name brand, but also what you're going to get with that brand. You're going to get spectacular, exciting knockouts and all this kind of business. And that's what fans want to see. There was somebody in the comments of a previous video where I talked about Dana White's most recent Zufa boxing card, kind of bigging the card up. And the guy said, well, how can the matchmaking be good when all but one of the fights ended by knockout? Surely that would indicate that the matchmaking isn't good. But again, matchmaking, and I did specify this in a video, isn't just about matching people together who are apparently even or relatively even in terms of ability. It's about matching styles together that are going to produce entertainment. That is part of what makes a good matchmaker. Are the styles that you're matching together going to produce entertainment? Nobody wants to watch a card where there's no knockouts. People like knockouts. So I think that Zufa Boxing have shown tremendous potential with their past 2 shows. The first card was kind of weak, but cards 2 and 3 have been highly entertaining, particularly card 2. I think it was card 2 with Kalajic versus Vozdek. I mean, what a dramatic fight that was. all the fights on that card that I saw were fire. So yeah, good matchmaking from an entertainment perspective. Now look, there are going to be some of you who didn't like it. Maybe didn't like either of the last two Zufa boxing cards for whatever reason. But you have to try and take your perspective out of it and try and think of the vast majority of the sport watching public. Are they going to find it entertaining? You might have some issue with it, but all the majority of casuals like it. That is how you grow a promotional company, if you can bring the casuals in to follow your brand. Because us hardcore boxing fans constitute only a tiny minority of the overall people that watch boxing. So if, as a promoter, you can bring in a lot of casual fans, well, you're onto a winner. And I think Dana White has a formula there, which is obviously brought over from UFC, which I think can make an impact in boxing. The problem, and we've been talking about this for the longest time now, and I will get on to Eddie Hearn's 5-year deal and some more of the back and forth between Eddie Hearn and Dana White. But obviously, the critique with trying to implement a UFC style model in boxing is that the money is so much lower than it's been in boxing for decades and decades. Now, Dana White always comes out and rubbishes this, but he's basically talking about lower tier fighters in MMA make more money than lower tier fighters in boxing. Well, that is the case in America, not necessarily the case in the UK. Because in the UK, a lot of fighters experience great local support. I mean, look at Johnny Fisher. You seriously think a fighter of that level, the equivalent of that level in MMA, would be making anywhere near that much money? Right? So in Britain, the home of the modern incarnation of boxing, Queensberry Rules, it's a little different type of market than the United States. Okay, there's a lot more fierce support for local fighters who may not even be at a particularly great level. You see? And so those guys, I have to imagine, are being paid just as much, if not more, than some of the lower level UFC guys. But when it comes to the top guys, there's just no comparison. The top boxers get paid many, many, many times more than the top UFC fighters. And it's always been that way. I mean, you go back to the 1980s and early 90s, Mike Tyson was making over 20 million a fight for some fights back in the 80s and 90s, right? He obviously lost to Buster Douglas in February 1990. But imagine a sport where people are getting paid, heavyweights, over 20 million a fight. Fast forward over 30 years, and what, Dana White wants to come in and have people get paid less than the heavyweight champion was getting paid in the 1980s, half, quarter, an eighth. This is going to be one of the problems for Dana White, is that in MMA, he was able to set the precedent. He was able to establish a model which other MMA promotional companies would follow because it was a new industry, basically. But with boxing, there's an established industry. There's an established pay scale going back, well over a century now. So how do you come in and remix all that? Anyway, based upon the budget, based upon the subscriber base of Paramount, based upon something which I didn't previously realize, which is that, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I've been told this, Paramount won't be doing any pay-per-views. You just pay one fee, which is 80 or 90 pounds or something like that, as I understand it. Maybe 100 pounds for the year, and you get all of the UFC content. If it's a similar situation with Zufa, but I mean, right now they're putting on the shows for free on YouTube, which is another great thing from a PR perspective, from a visibility perspective, from a marketing perspective in the early days, to get the name out there, get the brand out there, and start developing a following. So, yes, Interesting times. I think that Dana White so far is showing a lot of promise with Zufa Boxing as far as the matchmaking. I do think that they would help themselves a lot by having a crowd in there, a proper crowd, because the atmosphere is a bit dead. And when you're clipping up the knockouts, it's going to draw more attention when you hear a roar of the crowd, when somebody gets knocked down or there's a bit of high drama in the fight. So they're going to need to sort that out. Also, the visuals are not particularly engaging or striking. They look very generic, don't they? Zufa Boxing, the way the rings look, the ring looks, excuse me, it all looks very generic and kind of bland. And all of these things do factor in on a subconscious level, particularly when you're dealing with the masses. So they might want to look into all that. But like I say, there's a tremendous amount of potential. And I think Eddie Hearn needs to be far more worried than I previously thought, to be honest. I mean, you look at the state of boxing in America, basically, Zufa Boxing, Dana White are walking onto an empty battlefield because Top Rank don't have a TV deal anymore. PBC are clinging on by a thread. Oscar De La Hoya is being Oscar De La Hoya, right? Sabotaging himself. So where's the competition really for Dana White? I'm not surprised he said it's like beating up babies coming into boxing at the minute, because he's probably more so thinking of the American scene. If he was to try and implement this stuff on the British scene, it'd be a lot more difficult. I'm not saying it'd be impossible, but there'd be a lot more of a challenge because the British boxing community is a bit different to what it is in America. The dynamics are a little bit different as far as the fans and what have you. So yeah, that'll be a bit more of a challenge for him. But in America, Dana White might be able to take over as the #1 boxing promoter maybe by the end of the year. Now, some people are going to say Eddie Hearn is the #1 boxing promoter in America. Is he really? I mean, maybe he is for now, but with Dana White on the scene, is Eddie Hearn going to be that much stronger? We shall see. As Dana White keeps saying, judge me by the work I've done at the end of the year. So, yeah, and also the advantage for Zufa Boxing is that they get their fighters to fight each other on a very regular basis. If you go by the UFC history, you'd have to expect the same for Zufa Boxing. So, we shall see. But anyway, more about the specifics of what was said. Dana White saying that it's like beating up babies. Eddie Hearn doesn't have any vision. He's basically become part of the problem in boxing. I think that it's an oversimplification. I do think he's selling Eddie Hearn short. Eddie Hearn was the first promoter in boxing that I can recall to fully utilize social media to make himself accessible, because trust me, folks, growing up in the 80s and 90s, boxing promoters were not accessible. You couldn't just walk up to a boxing promoter with a camera and start filming them, asking for an interview. They'd want to see your press credentials. They want to know that you work for one of the major newspapers or television companies. And when Eddie Hearn first emerged on the scene and he was on Twitter, utilizing social media, Frank Warren started mocking him. He's always on that Twitter. Frank Warren couldn't see the future. Couldn't see what the future was obviously going to be. So no, Eddie Hearn innovated a lot, particularly in his early years, but the innovations Eddie Hearn made would later become industry standard. So these days, it looks like he isn't doing anything different to the other promoters. But if you understand the context of when he arrived on the boxing scene, he was very different. So I do think Dana White is incorrect when he says there was no vision from Eddie Hearn and all that kind of stuff. No, Eddie Hearn did change the game, certainly in the UK scene, when he first arrived, right? Got his Sky deal. But Obviously, Eddie Hearn has said some things which I don't agree with, saying that, if he had put on an FA Jagba Charles Martin type card, he would have got absolutely obliterated by the fans. But this is the guy that put on Dave Allen versus Johnny Fisher 2, and that headlined. That's literally a lower level fight than Charles Martin versus FA Jagba. Anyway, I made that point already. So, one of the things I want to say about Eddie Hearn as well is that he suffers from hubris. He suffers from overconfidence. He suffers from underestimating his opponents. Because you guys might remember that for the longest time, when he and Frank Warren were at each other's throats, Eddie Hearn would always dismiss Frank Warren and say, he's not competition. He'd always send people to Company's house and say, look up Frank Warren's business on there, and you'll understand he's not competition. I don't see him as competition. He'd always deride him, downplay what a threat Frank Warren was. Well, now Frank Warren is overtaking Eddie Hearn, on the UK scene at least. Because again, Hearn got too arrogant, too complacent, thought that he was King Midas, finally discovered he wasn't, right? And it's been a similar thing with Dana White, because when Dana White and Zufa Boxing initially announced that they were coming into the sport, Eddie was like, it's only going to be a small scale operation. They'll be signing low level fighters and the kind of guys who would ordinarily be doing small hall shows, fighting on small hall shows. That's all he'll be signing. So I don't know where they're really going to go with that. But here we are, and he's just signed Jai Opetaia, who isn't a big ticket seller, but he could be under Zufa Boxing. Because I don't think Jai Opetaia has been promoted well by Matchroom. I don't think they really know what to do with him, how to promote him. I think Zufa Boxing, Dana White know exactly how to promote a guy like Jai Opetaia. Don't get it twisted. There are some issues already. I mean, as far as I'm aware, Opetaia's fight against Brandon Glanton will not have the IBF title on the line, only the Zufa title. And when Jai Opetaia signed with Zufa, he claimed he was going to become undisputed with them. So has he been hoodwinked? Have his lawyers not thoroughly looked at the contracts and therefore allowed Zufa to pull a fast one over Jai Opetaia and sign him with no intention of getting undisputed? So there are some issues there, but when I look at Opetaia's style, again, you think about Opetaia from a matchmaking perspective. If you want to put on a championship fight with a high probability of fireworks, Jai Opetaia would be on the shortlist of champions you'd want to put in such a fight. Because Opetaia is vicious, he's a tremendous puncher, he's fast, he's a great athlete, but he also has shown vulnerability himself. He isn't a defensive whiz. Because he's so aggressive, he can put himself in compromising positions in the ring and get clipped. And he's been wobbled a number of times now. Could he be getting tight at the weight? I guess that's possible. That might be affecting his punch resistance. Or maybe the wear and tear. The 2 fights with Maris Breedis. But long story short, the point I'm making is Jai Opetaia is entertainment personified in a boxing ring. So if he's marketed the right way, I think he could become a big star. And I think it's an inspired signing by Zufa Boxing to get Jai Opetaia on the promotion. Because there have been a number of Pacific Islanders in the UFC who garnered a following and did very well. Mark Hunt being one of them. The other one was is it Tui Tupu? I forget how to pronounce his name now, but the guy that used to drink beer from a shoe, right? These guys garnered a following in UFC. So I think that Dana White understands that market, that fan base, and knows exactly what to do with Jai Opetaia. So, yeah. Again, I'm no big Dana White fan at all. I've been a big critic of his over the years. But the way I see it is his first few boxing events have been successful in producing entertainment, and therefore they're doing a good job with the matchmaking. And if they're able to do that with a very small pool of talent at the moment, imagine when they've got a much bigger, higher quality pool of talent, what they can do then. So, yeah, I think Eddie Hearn is a little delusional here, if I'm being honest. I'll come on to your questions and comments in just a few minutes. Just want to finish up the Eddie Hearn, Dana White stuff here. I will talk to you guys about it as well. Just getting my thoughts off my chest. Eddie Hearn has announced a 5-year extension with DAZN. He says he did look at other broadcasters in order to try and get a better deal for himself. But ultimately, he started talking about loyalty, this, that, and the other. It's a little silly because this is a guy who was with Sky for many years. When a better offer came in from DAZN, where was his loyalty then? So, you know, these promoters are such hypocrites when it comes to loyalty. They want loyalty to be a one-way street where you're loyal to them. And if you're not loyal to them, whoa, they're going to throw their toys out the pram. But when it comes time for them to be loyal, well, they turn up missing, right? The grass is greener and they go there. Or should I say, when the grass is greener, they go there. All right, so that's my take on the Eddie Hearn, Dana White situation. Big up the Sweet Maths for the super chat. He says, what do you think Turkey's end goal was or is? I thought it was to use boxing to legitimize the zone as a platform to allow the Saudis and Russians to take over football. Thoughts? Well, and big up the Sweet Maths. I've long said that, thank you, Daniel Edwards. Tui Tuvasa, that's the guy's name. Not Tui Tupu. I think Tui Tupu is actually a boxer, isn't he? Tui Tuvasa. So, for me, it's a simple case of the Saudis, yes, wanting to use boxing to change the global perception of their country, but also with a view to trying to make it a viable income stream in the future. I've always felt that the Saudis are looking to try and at least explore the possibility that boxing could be a moneymaker and earner for them in the long term. This notion that it's just a bunch of extremely doesn't even do it justice, but absurdly rich Arabs who are just having a laugh with a bit of a vanity project doing boxing, and they have no designs to try and turn it into a viable business. To me, that was always very inaccurate an assessment. No. They've always been looking to try and turn it into some type of profitable business. But in order to do so, they would have to corner the market, right? They'd have to come in and buy this and buy that and pay ridiculous fees for fighters and gain the public trust and build their brand, right? So I think the goal remains the same, but whether they'll achieve their goal is another matter. They might come to a point where they're like, you know what? We wanted to see if boxing could be commercially sustainable and lucrative over the long term, and we've now decided it can't be. That's why I think Turkey has been working with Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, Dana White, etc., because he's hedging his bets. It's basically like an audition. Okay, here's a bunch of cash for everybody. Who can do the best job? Not just in terms of making fights happen, but from a business perspective, right? Who can actually generate the most profit? I think that's the way Turkey and the Saudis are looking at it. Because at the end of the day, yes, they have a lot of oil, but oil don't last forever. And they're looking at their neighbors in the UAE and they're thinking, well, we need to take a leaf out of their book. We need to diversify our economy. before the oil runs out. And so that's what they're doing. Investing in all this Western sport. They're trying to diversify their economy. So shout out to the Sweet Mouse for the super chat. Well, that's a good question, actually, there, the box. It says, my question is, will Zufa be promoting the winner of Opetaya versus Glanton as undisputed like in UFC? Is that the way that they've managed to hoodwink Opetaya, if they have hoodwinked him? Because I can't tell you that they have, but it's out there as a possibility as far as I'm concerned. He's thinking undisputed means all the belts. They might be thinking that undisputed means the Zufa belt alone, right? Not the other sanctioning bodies. So we shall see in due course. Shout out to Afro Jam. He says, Eddie Hearn violated Opetaya. He's easy to promote. A crazy eye KO artist. Hearn just didn't want to build up Opetaya for Opetaya to run off and make money with someone else. I agree. Cash Machine says, boxing is so star dependent, it will never be a consistent moneymaker, even if you have a monopoly. You might be right, but I think that they're exploring whether it can be done. And I think the reason they're investing so heavily into boxing is because it's so unregulated compared to other sports. It's much easier for a man with a load of money to take over boxing than it would be to take over football or various other sports. Yes, big up Kieran Malcolm. If we can run those lights up, it'd be much appreciated. Tawheed Ali says, what financial benefit could boxing possibly give Turkey that he doesn't already have? He's already worth billions. But I've just explained it. It's about diversifying the Saudi economy, moving forward long term away from oil and natural resources. Their oil and natural resources aren't going to last forever. That is why under MBS, Saudi society has changed so dramatically. That's why all of a sudden they've allowed all this Western stuff into the country, right? I mean, before MBS came in, cinemas were illegal in Saudi Arabia. Okay. So they've made huge reforms in the country because they realize they're going to need to diversify away from just oil over the long term. And so that's why they're going into, as somebody said there, sports, video games, all sorts of stuff. It's not about Turkey's personal wealth. It's about the country as a whole, long term. They're thinking long term at this stage. Again, they're looking at their neighbors in the UAE and they're saying, well, we need to do something similar to them. Afro Jump says, they tie themselves in with your economy and culture, and that'll make it hard to remove them. Well, I heard, I don't know whether this is true, but somebody's saying that Ryan Garcia could be signing with Canelo's promotional company. Was it Ryan Garcia or Virgil Ortiz? One of them. All right, let's move on then from the Eddie Hearn versus Dana White stuff. We'll talk about the main topic of conversation for this stream. Big Johnny Partridge going at it with Carl Froch. We all saw what happened the other day at the press conference. Johnny Partridge came in shouting and screaming, as he does, claiming that he's the ultimate male and this, that, and the other. He actually asked the media to follow him around, which really shows you his true agenda. The man is so narcissistic, it's unbelievable. He loves the spotlight. He loves the attention. I don't see him the same way that I would look at other boxing dads like Ruben Guerrero or Angel Garcia. I think they were, they like the spotlight to some extent. But once their sons were no longer had fights scheduled, you wouldn't really hear from them that much. You certainly don't hear anything from them now. Whereas with, and it was always my view that with Ruben Guerrero and Angel Garcia, they were trying to take the pressure off their sons by involving themselves in antics in lead up to fights. I don't think that's the case with John Fury at all. I think he just loves the attention. He loves the spotlight because he's such a narcissist. And that's what it's all about. So, yeah, we all saw the theatrics from Johnny Partridge when he was saying, where's Carl Froch, this, that, and the other. He ran, and where did he run to? He was literally working, and he was called onto that little platform through the earpiece by a producer, and that's what he did. How's that running? Johnny Partridge just talking pure nonsense and doing it for the cameras, for the attention, to try and save his reputation, because he's had all these people call him out, or at least respond to his challenge that he put out several years ago, that he was the best man of his age group in the world at fighting. Obviously, Mickey Thiel was the first person to pull him up on that. Since then, there's been Dominic Negus, there's been Joe Egan, obviously, and various others. And John Fury hasn't fought any of them. So we know the context. John Fury, in this video here, you can see on screen on the Boxing Social YouTube channel, issued an apology to Steve Bunce. Now, this really should show you what a scumbag John Fury is, okay? Because Steve Bunce, and well, it doesn't just show you what a scumbag John Fury is, it also shows you what a spineless individual Steve Bunce is. Because seriously, folks, Steve Bunce is one of the biggest butt kissers in boxing that I've ever seen. The way this guy will suck up to certain fighters and kiss their butt to a ridiculous extent is embarrassing. Well, when you are that much of a sycophant and a butt kisser, the fighter, or in this case, the fighter's dad, who you've been sucking up to all these years, they don't even respect you. That's why John Fury just randomly told Steve Bunce, what the hell you looking at? Threatened to headbutt him. Steve Bunce said, I'm your friend, John. John Fury said, no, you're not. Zero respect. Now, Steve Bunce has subsequently done a couple of interviews where he said that John Fury apologized and he's okay and whatever. Why would John Fury do something like that to someone who's been such a Fury fan over the years, who's been so complimentary of the Furies over the years? Just think of the level of contempt that you must have for someone who only ever speaks well of you, to do something like that to them. But it also speaks to the lack of self-esteem of Bunce for basically accepting. In fact, he said that John Fury didn't even need to apologize. He just needed to realize that he'd overstepped the line. And he still considers John Fury a friend. I mean, why would you want to be friends with someone like that? And as for the apology, if John Fury's apology was sincere, he would have called Steve Bunce up himself privately and done so. But he didn't. He did the public apology first, right? Because that's all it's about with John Fury. Public perception. If he genuinely meant what he said as far as apologizing to Bonds, he would have rang the man up. So John Fury is some kind of narcissist. It's quite incredible. But anyway, he then goes on to call Carl Froch out for a boxing match. And in fact, I should just mention, in the video where he apologized to Steve Bunce, he said he wouldn't fight Carl Froch or Joe Egan unless it's in his barn. You know, the one he's been saying for years now, come down to my barn. Both of us go in, we'll lock the barn door behind us and only one man will come out. All this kind of tough talk from John Fury. And it's the kind of stuff he comes out with because he doesn't want to fight. Yeah, he'll try and intimidate you. He'll try and bark loud enough and viciously enough that you'll be scared away from fighting him. That's why he says all that kind of stuff. So anyway, he said that he wouldn't fight Carl Froch and Joe Egan in this video because he doesn't want to help him out financially. Well, why would Carl Froch need any financial help from John Fury? Anyway, so he said he wouldn't fight him. He doesn't want to help him out financially. But then he did a video calling Froch out, saying that he will fight him. He wants to do it on the undercard of his son's fight with Makhmudov. And he told Carl Froch to tell Netflix to call him and make him a big offer. And he said it's all about the money, right? Carl Froch responded and said that he accepts John Fury's challenge. He's up for fighting him in a boxing ring. And he vowed to absolutely demolish him. And I'm sure Carl Froch would demolish him. Carl Froch, obviously a lot closer to his boxing prime than John Fury by a number of decades. Right? Now, obviously, there's a size disparity there. But Froch has got to be walking around close to, I don't know, 190 pounds? 195 pounds solid? Doesn't have to watch what he eats or anything like that. You know, limit his calories. He can eat as much clean, healthy food and he looks in good shape. It's not like he's been ballooning up with fat. He just got more muscle on him now. So, no, I think Carl Froch would smash John Fury to pieces, to be honest with you. If they were to fight in a boxing match, he'd smash him to pieces. John Fury, in his prime, couldn't crack an egg. Right? He couldn't crack an egg and he was very chinny in his prime. So now, going up against the Carl Froch, who, okay, not a heavyweight, but I think he'll have enough power to hurt John Fury. And some people have asked the very relevant question, would it even get licensed, John Fury versus Carl Froch, or would they have to do it as an exhibition? Because John Fury at 60 is far more vulnerable to serious injury than he would have been in his 40s, 30s, 20s, etc. So I think Carl Froch would demolish John Fury in a boxing match. And so I have to ask the question, is John Fury even serious? Because again, with this guy, it's all about perception. It's all about giving off the image that he is something, so he doesn't have to actually prove it with actions. Yeah? Here, in this video, he's out jogging, exaggerating how much running he's doing. And he once again reiterates that whoever would pay for a Carl Froch John Fury fight needs to put their hands deep inside their pockets because it's going to take an awful lot of money to make it happen. That's the basic gist of what John Fury said in this video. He said you got to have deep pockets if you want to make this fight between him and Froch take place. So it could be a case of John Fury, wanting a ridiculous amount of money because he knows there's a very good chance he's going to get battered. Or he could just be pricing himself out of the fight completely, deliberately, and just doing all this nonsense, training and whatnot, fake training to save face. Because either is possible with this guy, to be honest. He's such a scumbag. Either is possible. And of course, Joe Egan continues to call out John Fury. He did this video saying, whether I fight you in the ring or on the cobbles, I'll smash you to bits. This is Joe Egan training, hitting the bag, talking about what's going to happen if he lands his right hand on John Fury's face. And in fact, the first of these videos, this one, ended with a screenshot of John Fury having been knocked out by Henry Akinwande in 3 rounds back in the days. And in this video here, I'm not playing the video, obviously, it's just a screenshot. He actually calls John Fury up. Remember, John Fury was saying in one of the previous videos regarding Carl Froch and Joe Egan, he wouldn't want to fight him in the ring, he wouldn't want to give him a payday, but they know how to get hold of him, so get hold of him and they'll fight in the barn. Well, Joe Egan did get hold of him, got his number, called him up, and John Fury swore a little bit and then hung the phone up. So much for wanting to organize a fight in a barn, right? As I understand it, John Fury lives next to or very close to a traveler's site. So if you're not a traveler, do you really want to go down and confront John Fury next to or close to a traveler's site? Probably not. Joe Egan, I don't believe, is a traveler. He's Irish, yes, from Dublin, I believe, but I don't think he has a traveler background. I could be wrong, but I don't think he does. Perhaps he hangs around with travelers and stuff like that, but I don't think his family actually comes from a traveling background. Again, I stand to be corrected if that's not the case. But yeah, Joe Egan's still calling out John Fury, and John Fury wanting no part of it, coming out with endless excuses. And did you guys, or do you guys, should I say, remember when John Fury initially agreed to fight Mickey Theo in a boxing match? Then he backtracked, and the excuse he came out with is that he didn't want to subject the audience to seeing a then 50-something-year-old man with his shirt off. He'd want people to feast their eyes on something better than that. Well, here he is at 60, and all of a sudden he's willing to get his shirt off and fight Carl Froch. So now it's not a problem. See, this guy just talks absolute rubbish. King James says John's the best heel boxing has ever seen. Jurassic says, who have you got? I think Carl Froch destroys John Fury. But as far as Froch wouldn't have got knocked out by an Akinwande jab, well, John Fury didn't get knocked out by an Akinwande jab. It was an Akinwande 1-2. And Froch probably would get knocked out by Akinwande, to be honest. But John Fury didn't have a great chin in his prime. At the age of 60, obviously his chin's going to be worse now. And Froch keeps himself in much better shape. He's a younger man, obviously, far closer to his fighting best, and he fought at a much higher level than John Fury. And John Fury, again, as big as he is, he scored 0 knockouts in his boxing career. 0 knockouts! I don't think he even scored a knockdown. I'm not certain on that part, but I know he never scored a knockout. There's a stoppage on his record against Michael Murray because Michael Murray injured his shoulder. Not because he was getting dropped or anything. So, John Fury, as big as he is, 0 knockouts in his prime when he was a pro boxer. So I don't think there's going to be any artillery that Carl Froch will really have to be worried about coming from John Fury's fists. Although somebody, it might have been Eddie Hearn actually, who was it? There was an interview I saw earlier on today, and they were wondering whether John Fury might use dirty tactics in the Carl Froch fight. No, in fact, I think it was, God, who was it now? forget who it was now. But anyway, there was somebody talking about the possibility of John Fury using dirty tactics against Carl Froch if the fight were to happen. Maybe trying to bite him or headbutt him or you name it, because he is stupid like that. Mr. Merkel says, Conor signing for Zufa is crazy. Wow, has that happened? People are saying Conor Ben has signed with Zufa. DSROA says, Eddie about to release the Eggate scandal truth. Oh, wow, they're saying, yeah, check the Zufa account. Big up Charles B says, Ben signed with Zufa. Okay, so it's true. Eddie Hearn talks about loyalty all the time. He's not going to feel much loyalty from that move, is he? And you know what? Is it a good move for Conor Ben? I would say probably getting in early. Probably. Yeah, probably. There was talk that Johnny Fisher had received some enormous offer. But it turns out it wasn't from Zufa and it wasn't from Misfits. It was from maybe Netflix, Tyson Fury, to fight Jamie TKV on the undercard of Fury versus Makhmudov. And he turned it down out of loyalty to Hearn and maybe an improved contract from Hearn, I'm not sure. And to be honest, if Eddie Hearn has been ditched by Conor Ben in this way, Hearn deserves it. Yeah? Because most of us could see that Conor Ben was, how can I describe it? Somebody of unsound character. I think most of us could see that through the whole Eggate thing. This guy is of unsound character. The fact that Eddie Hearn sung his praises and backed him all the way and all this kind of stuff, that involved insulting the public's intelligence constantly, right? And so for that reason, if Conor Ben has snaked him, I say, well, Eddie Hearn deserves it. Because he facilitated Conor Ben trying to circumvent the PED testing protocols and whatnot. Yeah, Eddie Hearn tried to facilitate all that stuff. Gaslight the public over the nature of Conor Ben being quote-unquote cleared. We still don't know the grounds on which he was allowed to continue boxing. He's allowed to present that information. He's allowed to release that information as Conor Ben. No one else is, but he's allowed to. But he's chosen not to. And Eddie Hearn kept defending him over it. So, yeah, if Conor Ben has snaked him, Eddie Hearn deserves it. In fact, let me look it up now. It is quite funny, isn't it? Yeah, here we go. Ariel Helwani has got a quote. Let me get a screenshot up here. Ariel Helwani's got a quote on X. Yeah, let me get this up. Where we at? Bear with me a second, people. So here is statement from Clonaghen. I'm filled with excitement and hunger for what's ahead with Zufa boxing. I want the legacy fights, the biggest nights, the biggest stages. I fear no man at any weight, and I'm ready to give the fans the fights they've been calling for. I'm in my prime, and together we have bold, ambitious plans. Again, Eddie Hearn always underestimating his competition. As much as Conor Ben isn't some proven world-level talent, he is a moneymaker for Eddie Hearn. And that's why Eddie Hearn has been touting him for so long and giving it all this big talk. And so now one of his big moneymakers has jumped ship. This is actually hilarious. And there was long talk that Conor Ben's best chance of winning a world title would be to fight Mario Barrios. Well, Barrios is taking on Ryan Garcia, and the other belts are tied up with other fights. It might actually be the case that the best opportunity for Conor Ben to win something called a world title would be to take the Zufa deal and fight some random for the Zufa belt. What do you guys think? Yeah, exactly as Froch said there. Ben is doing a Eubank Jr. by winning a Zufa belt and claiming he's a world champion. Okay, Rhubarb Giraffe says, Hearn crying on Sky Nicholson's shoulder right now. Hayed says Hearn is finished now. And you know, it's really interesting that Zufa would target Conor Ben. Isn't that interesting? Conor Ben has the kind of style that works for Zufa. I spoke about this before. Zufa are not just looking for talent, they're looking for talent that is entertaining, right? They're looking for fighters that have a style which is conducive to producing entertaining fights. Conor Ben has that. He might not be a world-class fighter. I said might. We'll wait and see. But he is an entertaining fighter. So perhaps that was one aspect of it, but I can't help but feel as though this move by Dana White is designed to send a message to Eddie Hearn. We're not just going to take the Opetayas of the world who weren't really making a lot of money for you. No, no, no. We're going to come right across and take one of your biggest stars commercially. How's that as a statement of intent? That'd be horrible, actually. Gandozi says Dana will give him a fight, then match him up with his golden boy called Walsh. Yeah, that Walsh guy is terrible to watch. I'm not sure why Dana White likes him, because he's not entertaining at all. Striker says Zufa just need to sign AJ now. Well, apparently they can't because AJ has a lifetime contract with Matchroom. KD versus the World says, who you got, Torres or Sanchez? I've actually got Torres in that fight because he's a bit more active in the ring, I'm talking about. He throws more punches. And he's got an underrated ring IQ. Even though he looks ragged and messy in the ring a lot of the time, and he's vulnerable. I've seen him hurt with a jab before, and he got knocked out badly in the amateurs by Bakadin Jalalov, who is a tremendous puncher. So obviously I see the vulnerabilities with Torres, but Sanchez is so low volume, it's frustrating. He just throws so few punches, and he's obviously had issues with his knees over the past few years. I think Sanchez is the bigger one-punch fighter. I think he has more one-punch power than Richard Torres, and he's more neat and tidy in his style. But as I say, I just think he doesn't throw enough punches. And I do question his age. Don't get it twisted. Frank Sanchez could knock Richard Torres into next week if he catches him clean. But will he catch him clean, or will he be too preoccupied posturing and giving rounds away while Torres is working away and racking up the points and putting rounds in the bank? We got Ben Odom for the super chat. No message on that one, but if he does want to ask anything, if you want to ask anything, Ben, I'll gladly read it out. Big up Ben Odom every time. Afro Jam says Robert Garcia is not with this loyal talk from Hearn either. Or saying either pay up or shut up. Yep. Yeah, that's interesting. It's a strategic move, isn't it, King James? Anyone who wants that Ben payday in England now must see Zufa, Shakur, Haney, Keyshawn, etc. But here's the thing. They might want that payday, but do they need it? Because there are other big fights available for those guys. Conor Ben might have inadvertently frozen himself out, potentially, right? It depends on how much money Zufa are willing to offer these other guys to fight Ben, I guess. The box says, what UK fighters does Hearn still have that are actually good? Well, he's got 2 world champions in Josh Kelly and, God, who's the other world champion now? Josh Kelly, Dalton Smith, excuse me. Dalton Smith as well. Oh yeah, Lewis Crocker is another one. Eddie's best fighter is Bivol. Yeah, his best fighter is Bivol. But not his most lucrative fighter. Wave says, no, Conor is a slime ball. Oh my God. I can't wait to watch the next Eddie Hearn interview after this news. I cannot wait. I can't wait. All of that sticking behind Conor during the thick and thin and the whole clomiphene scandal. Conor's innocent. I believe him. He's a great man. He's a great guy, Conor. He's so loyal. We're loyal to him and he's loyal to us. Yo, I've been saying for the longest time, forget about loyalty in boxing. As Mickey Duff once said, if you want loyalty, get a dog. Anyone who starts talking loyalty in boxing is either naive or devious, because they use this whole loyalty thing as a way to guilt trip people to doing what they want them to do. Anyone talking about loyalty in boxing is either naive or manipulative. People saying Ben just released a statement. Isn't it the statement that's on the screen? This is Ariel Helwani quoting a statement from Conor Ben. I can go to his actual Instagram page if you guys want and screenshot something from there. Let's have a look. Clonaghan. Hang on. Conor Ben. Here we go. 2.4 million followers on Instagram. Okay, yeah, here we go. This is a more lengthy statement. So I'll get this up on screen. This is actually hilarious. All right, I'm going to have to screenshot it from here. Blow it up on screen. Bear with me a sec, guys. It's a bit technical trying to get this up here. Give me a few seconds. So for those of you just joining the chat, in case you haven't heard, Conor Ben has left Eddie Hearn and signed with Zufa Boxing. Yo. That is a statement of intent by Dana White. Because Conor Ben is not the most talented fighter out there. But he's a big money earner for Matchroom. So it's like he's really going for Matchroom's jugular with this signing. All right, I can get this on screen now. You guys can see it. This is the statement from Conor Ben via his Instagram page. First and foremost, I want to thank Eddie Hearn and the entire team at Matchroom for everything they've done for me over the past decade, from guiding me when I first turned pro to headlining stadium shows. They were not only with me for those highlight moments, but stood shoulder to shoulder with me during the tough times. It's been a journey beyond anything we could have imagined, and for their belief, support and guidance, I will always be truly grateful. But Zufa Boxing presented me with an opportunity I simply couldn't refuse. I'd love Eddie to continue to be part of my team and for our partnership to evolve in this new chapter. I'm filled with excitement and hunger for what's ahead with Zufa Boxing. I want the legacy fights, the biggest nights, the biggest stages. I fear no man at any weight, and I'm ready to give the fans the fights they've been calling for. I'm in my prime, and together we have bold, ambitious plans. Now, as far as this little consolation prize, runners-up prize that he offered Eddie Hearn there, he'd like him to still be part of his team in some way. Would Eddie Hearn even be willing to do that? And in what capacity would Eddie Hearn be part of his team? Would he even be needed? It just seems like a token throwaway gesture to me, but we'll see. I can't wait for the next Eddie Hearn interview when he's asked about this. Because Hearn always likes to try and put a brave face on everything. You know, when something bad happens, it's not that bad, we're not that bothered. He'll always downplay it. When in some cases you can see he's absolutely seething inside. Surely he's seething with this. Big up Grizz D for the super chat. He says, big up Hatman. Do you think Hearn has what it takes to make a comeback like Bricktop? Time will tell, but personally, I don't think so. Big up United 927. He says, Hearn's best fighter will be Johnny Fisher soon. Bosh! He might end up on Zufa as well. Okay. So Wave says, Conor Ben's deal with Zufa is a one-fight, 8-figure deal, sources told. Life-changing money for Ben. Well, this statement doesn't sound like it's a one-fight deal. Okay, that's interesting. A one-fight deal. One fight against who? But yeah, to Grisdy's point, no, I don't think that Eddie Hearn would be able to come back the way that Frank Warren did from the boxing wilderness. I don't see it. I don't think Eddie Hearn has the hunger to do that. I mean, this is a guy even 10, 15 years ago who was already talking about retirement. So, no, I don't think Eddie Hearn could do it. I don't think he's as driven as Frank Warren. Because Frank Warren didn't inherit a business. He literally got it out of the mud. Big up Grisdy. Big up President Brush. He says, mark my words, Hatman, Zufa will sign Ortiz and block the Boots fight. Watch. Well, Oscar De La Hoya's already blocking it, unfortunately, because he went to court to get an injunction. Is that the right legal terminology to describe what he did? Or a restraining order? I forget how it was actually described in the legal language. But as it stands right now, De La Hoya's blocking the fight legally. So even if Zufa were to block it, well, De La Hoya's already blocking it. So whether Ortiz signs with Zufa or not, De La Hoya doesn't want it to happen. And I guess you believe Zufa wouldn't want it to happen unless Boots also signed with Zufa Boxing. Shout out to everyone in the live chat. Talking about a lot of boxing. But this breaking news, which literally just broke in the last few minutes. Conor Ben signing with Zufa. But then some interesting follow-up details from Chris Mannix, who is claiming, and I have to say claiming, that it's a one-fight deal for 8 figures. I mean, that's wild. That is really wild. One fight for 8 figures? What in the world is all that about? That has got to be a big fight. Who could it possibly be against if they're willing to give Conor Ben 8 figures for one fight? Zufa. Who could it be against? Any ideas, any suggestions out there? Johnny Gaffer says, one fight deal, but you're talking about a new chapter. I don't think so. Yeah, Ben's statement doesn't sound like a one fight deal, does it? So, I'm not sure what's going on there. Because he's talking about his future with Zufa. Make of that what you will. Perhaps we'll get some clarification from Clonahan himself. Shout out to Mr. Luca. He says, how will UFC fighters react to this? Yeah, that's one of the obvious questions, isn't it? With Zufa's involvement in boxing, I mean, Eddie Hearn has pointed out recently that, according to him, J.R. Patara is getting more money to fight Brandon Glanton than Paddy Pimblett got for his last few fights. And Paddy Pimblett is obviously far more famous and well-known than J.R. Patara is right now. So how could it be that one of UFC's biggest stars, with a much bigger public profile than Opatara, is getting paid significantly less than he is? So many UFC fighters over the years have complained about the pay. And surely the complaints are going to increase. And apparently UFC have been increasing some of their pay a little bit in the past couple, or over the past year or so, as I understand it. But I don't think that can really compensate. I don't think that could stop the UFC fighters who are becoming increasingly disgruntled seeing what their cousins over in boxing are getting under the same guy, Dana White. Although I should say, Dana White owns a minority stake in Zufa. I don't think it's a majority stake. I think it's a minority stake, like 40%. So perhaps Zufa will be willing to pay much bigger purses than the UFC because Dana White is not the one ultimately with the most amount of power in that organization. KD versus the World says it's definitely Ryan Garcia, regardless of if he wins or loses. There was someone else who Conor Ben used to go back and forth with years ago, and that was Tank Davis. Imagine if it turned out to be Tank Davis. Conor Ben versus Tank Davis. Obviously, there's a big size disparity there, but I can't imagine it will be. Tank Davis has got all sorts of legal problems right now, but just throwing it out there as a random one without thinking it through, really. Just because they did have beef, those two, back in the days. Tony S says, I think it might be Shakur. And that's a guaranteed one-sided beatdown. Ganzoy says, Ben versus Charlo's a good shout. President Brush says Hearn bit off more than he can chew. And speaking of that, I don't really find, and I'm going to talk about something totally random here, but it's just based off that saying, biting off more than you can chew. I don't really find Aries Spears, he's an American comedian, to be particularly funny. But he did do a video taking the mick out of Will Smith, who did a freestyle sometime last year. You know, what people call a freestyle. He spat some bars anyway. And he was taking the mick out of the bars. And the bars were terrible for the most part. Yeah, act bizarre. Yeah, that's the one. That's because I'm an action star. Sometimes I act bizarre. Yo, what the hell was that? Act bizarre. Yeah. Will Smith is just naturally corny. People who are naturally corny shouldn't rap. Or at least they shouldn't try to be taken seriously rapping when they're naturally corny. Somebody in the comments said that Will Smith raps like an undercover cop. That's because I'm an action star. Sometimes I might act bizarre. Yeah, he said, I bite off more than I can chew, and I chew it. What's the line about the hand grenade? Yeah, I took the pin out of the grenade on purpose when I threw it. Like, what does that even mean? I took the pin out of the grenade on purpose when I threw it. Oh yeah, everyone takes the pin out of the grenade on purpose when they throw it. What's man talking about? Yo, embarrassing. Because I'm an action star. Sometimes I act bizarre. He sounds like someone performing something on a Broadway play, doesn't he? I'm an action star. I act bizarre. Like a Broadway musical. crazy cadence, like a Broadway musical cadence. Oh my God, I'm an action star. My actor. That's a, I watched that recently, you know. Like again, I saw it originally a few months ago, but watched it again recently. It's just cracking up. Who's more corny, Will Smith or Nick Cannon? Nick Cannon's so corny. But you'd have to go some to be more corny than Will Smith. Shout out to Matt Borgerson. He says, how ripped does Ryan look? He looks SRS today. Well, when you're fighting at 147, and obviously he's got a history of failing PED tests, but I mean, how ripped does Haney look at 147? You know, Haney looks a lot more ripped, and he was always in shape, Haney, but he looks a lot more bulky and ripped at 147 than he did in the lower weight division. So when you keep the body fat low and you add muscle, it makes you look more ripped, you know? That's very true, Hannibal Beats. He says, Will's more corny than Nick. At least Nick don't let the girls control his emotions and mind. That's very true. Nick ain't whipped the way that Will's whipped. That's very true. Fernie G says, Hammond, what do you think of Roy Jones as a rapper? I think he has one banger for sure. Yeah. Not a great rapper, but he performed well enough on those songs that he did. One of them was Can't Be Touched. What was the other one? Can't Be Touched was his best song, but he did another song that was pretty good. Oh, You Must Have Forgot. Yeah. You Must Have Forgot. Can't Be Touched is better though. Mac B says 50 Cent said he will never diss Nick Cannon because he's too corny. So he's safe then. So that's how you're safe from being dissed by 50 Cent. Just be too corny. Tony S says, what about Prince the Scene rapping Hatman? That was unbelievably cringe. That was like Ali G or something. That was so cringe. Big up Toro. He says, big up Hatman from NYC. Ryan is eating his beef sandwiches from Mexico. Mario Barrios looks a bit timid to me in this build-up. His brother Luigi Barrios would do better. I think the fight will be somewhat competitive. But I reckon Ryan Garcia... I mean, Barrios is so bad. In fact, I was watching Paulie Malignaggi and Chris Algieri on their podcast on the Boxing Scene YouTube channel talk about this upcoming Ryan Garcia Barrios fight. And Malignaggi, I don't know if he's got something personal against Barrios, but he kept at every opportunity leaning in on how trash and garbage Barrios is. Look, I agree, Barrios is trash, but Malignaggi kept wanting to circle back and say over and over again, oh my God, Barrios is so garbage. As if he's got some kind of personal issue with him. I don't know, but yeah, Barrios is trash. But how good is Ryan Garcia? Ryan Garcia don't have great boxing skills, does he? He's a great athlete, and he's a great puncher, at least up to 140. Barrios was coming up in weight himself, obviously. We got President Brush for the super chat. He says, what do you think Frank and Turkey fell out over? If they have fallen out, and it's reasonable to suspect that they have, I think it's potentially a clash of personalities because both guys have very bullish personalities. So I think it'll be that. I mean, if you hear the stuff that Eddie Hearn says, Turkey will just call him up, swear at him, insult him, and then put the phone down. Has he tried something like that with Frank Warren? I don't know, but maybe he has spoken to Warren in a way that Warren didn't appreciate, and that caused the relationship to deteriorate. I don't know. We're all just speculating at the end of the day. None of us know. But I'll put that out there as a possibility. Big up President Brush. What do you think, though? Just because I'm an action star, sometimes I might act bizarre. I'll never get old, I swear. In fact, after this stream, I'm going right to watch that video again. I'm an action star. I act bizarre. Yeah. I pulled the pin out of the grenade on purpose when I threw it. Why else would someone pull the pin out of a grenade? If not on purpose. Like, what is man talking about? Yeah, he sounded like Nicki Minaj for the first few bars. But after that, he went into something else. For the first few bars, it was like some Cardi B, Nicki Minaj flow. Even though I'm an action star. Indeed, Ayed. Who gets the first Hearn interview? That'll be very interesting. Who gets the first Hearn interview? One sec, peeps. I'll be back. All right, I'm back. I want to ask you guys something. Since we're talking about corniness, what actually causes someone to be corny? What's the cause of it? How does it work? How does someone get to become corny? Like, what mechanisms are going on in their psychology that end up with them being corny? Is it just random? I want to say with Nick Cannon and Will Smith, they're two guys who are, to some extent, uncomfortable in their own shoes. You know, like that. They're desperate for credibility, desperate to be accepted. That's the vibe I get from both of them. And the more desperate they are to be seen as credible, the more they come across as corny. Striker says lack of self-awareness. Yeah, oh, exactly. KD versus the world described it much better than I did. Overcompensating for something. Yes, overcompensating. Lack of self-awareness is also part of it, for sure. Lack of self-awareness is what facilitates it. But I think what drives it is, as KD said, overcompensating for something. Overcompensating and then not realizing how ridiculous they look when they're overcompensating. That's when the lack of awareness comes in. Because it is, because I've seen like some Nick Cannon interviews and I'm like, this guy is so corny. The way he talks, the way he laughs, like everything about him is just mad corny. And Nick Cannon, as I say, there's an old school UK saying, he's begging it. Yeah, that's when you're trying to be something you're really not. He's begging it. Nick Cannon, he ain't comfortable in his own shoes. Hannibal Beat says, hey man, what's the name of the song with Action Star in it? I don't know the name of the song, but if you just type in Will Smith freestyle, it will come up. Is it called the Lunch Break Freestyle or something like that? That's when he comes out with the Action Star. Act bizarre. I can't get enough of that, to be honest. I can't get enough of that track. Indeed, H2O. Let's see if Eddie backs Ben as before. Vibes Not Found says, Hatman, have you seen the video of Tim Westwood cussing out Will Smith in the 90s when he was in the UK? What, to his face? Or just talking about him disparagingly? Everybody talked about Will Smith disparagingly back in the 90s on air. It was no big deal. In terms of to his face, I've never seen that. Tim Westwood himself is corny. Not as corny as Will Smith, but still very corny. Color says corny is subjective though. To someone you're corny, Hatman. Well, yeah, I guess. But Will Smith and Nick Cannon are seen as corny by most people. So if there's like the random odd person who thinks I'm corny, okay, cool. But the vast majority of people think that Nick Cannon and Will Smith are corny. Matt B Music says Jada went from Tupac to marrying Will Smith. I mean, I want to say black Americans, some think that black British people are corny in general, right? They don't understand black people talking with British accents. They find anyone talking with a British accent that's black, it's corny. Automatically to them, it's corny because they're not used to it. Yeah, Joshua. Well, is Joshua corny? I guess he is kind of corny, but to me, Joshua's just weird. He's just weird. More than corny, AJ is weird. Wilder's corny. Yeah, Wilder is corny. He's not like Nick Cannon corny, but he is corny. You know what? That's a great point, Dr. Wu. It says, I hated the Westwood show. Big up to those at HMP. He promoted stereotypically negative culture. Yeah, he did. That's a great point. Yeah, he was always doing that. He was always bigging up the HMP massive. It's a middle class son of a vicar. Was he the son of a vicar? Reverend or something? Reverend Westwood? Yeah, Tupac in that video when he was, whatever he was, 17, 18, was overtly effeminate. I mean, if you didn't know who Tupac was and you saw that video, you would think that that guy was batting for the other team. Like, seriously, if you saw that video right there and you didn't know who Tupac was, you think, wow, this is an effeminate young man. You think he was Rainbow Gang. Katie versus the World says Javonta is a walking stereotype. He's corny. Again, to what the other guy said, corny is, to some extent, subjective. And almost anyone could be perceived as corny. Not anyone, but, a lot of people could be perceived as corny by someone. I don't really see Javonte as corny per se. I just see him as how do I describe Javonte Davis? I'm struggling to find the words to know how to describe Javonte Davis. He's just stupid, stupid, and frustrating because he's so talented Uh, yeah, immature. Yeah, immature is probably a better way to describe Joanna Davis. Just very, very immature. A man in his 30s stuck in the mindset of a 15-year-old boy. Just very immature. Very, very immature. You got Vibes Not Found for the super chat. It says, hey, Hatman, you hear about the Russian guy in Africa meeting up with women in Kenya, Zambia, and Ghana and taking them back home and secretly filming them to sell the content on Telegram? Yes, I do know about this guy. The only surprise, well, it's not really a surprise, but the only reason this is even a story is because he's been outed. Because that thing has been going on in Africa for decades. You know, it's not like no one that's familiar with the African continent will be shocked that that guy was able to do that. So, yeah, I wasn't surprised by it at all. Hypergamy is a thing, you know? Most women in this world are naturally hypergamous. So when they encounter foreigners who they perceive to be higher up the socio-economic ladder than most of the local men that they encounter, all of a sudden the rules of engagement change, whereby local men would have to jump through hoops of fire in order to just get their number. This foreign guy, well, he can just waltz right in and he can smash them within 10 minutes. That's the nature of hypergamy. And it's the same in every country, really, right? There are going to be women in the UK who make it extremely difficult for the average man, damn near impossible. But if a guy hits them up in their DMs and he's a multi-millionaire with a yacht in Dubai, best believe she's giving it up quick, fast. No questions asked. Yeah? Quick, fast. So hypergamy is a thing. And I mentioned this before. I'm not talking about all right? I'm talking in general. Women in general are more willing to sacrifice their dignity in order to elevate their lifestyle. Women in general are more willing to do that than men are. Men tend to have a bit more pride and a bit more dignity. They're not as willing generally to go so far compromising their dignity in order to elevate the lifestyle. Women are more willing to do it. And I mean everywhere, in most countries anyway. They're more willing to do it. And that's why I don't really see it as sad, you know, because some people, particularly in the Afrocentric community, they're saying, oh, this is a terrible, and also women, you know, this is terrible exploitation of women in Africa and vulnerable women and this and that. Some of these women apparently had husbands. I don't see it as the Russian guy coming in there and taking advantage of anyone. Those women willingly allowed themselves, you know, to be exploited, quote unquote, in that way. To me, it speaks more to the nature of a lot of women Do you know what I mean? Now, some people said, well, why didn't he go to Poland and do that? Okay, there's an element of that there. Like, why didn't he go to a European country and do that? But the point is, he was only able to do it because the women were willing. And that is an aspect of female nature that a lot of people don't want to talk about and don't want to confront. It says most had husbands. Do you know what I mean? Like, how can someone who has a husband that does something like that be cast in the role of victim? I mean, even as a black person from the West, when you come to Africa and they find out, they realize, they hear your accent and the way you carry yourself, you're from the West, the rules of engagement are different for you too. And it is what it is. If you're a black American in Africa, the women are going to be more receptive and more keen than they would be if you were a local guy. Same if you're black British or whatever. Hypergamy's real. Tony S says, but they blame their husbands for it, saying they don't give them time. Yeah, that old lack of accountability thing. Incredible, isn't it? You know, I think it was a YouTube video or was it a Netflix documentary, but I've seen so many of these stories over the years, particularly in the United States, right? But some of them have happened in Britain too. You know, those scenarios where some woman starts having an affair, right? Cheating on her husband. And the guy that she's having an affair with, she convinces him to unalive the husband. That is way more common, it would seem, than scenarios where the man's having an affair and he convinces the woman he's having an affair with to unalive his wife. It's like that hardly ever happens. But the amount of these women who have an affair, I mean, it's bad enough you're having an affair. It's bad enough you're cheating on your husband. Now you're going to tell that guy you're cheating with to unalive him. I mean, what is all that about? Talk about treachery. It's not enough you're cheating. Now you got to have him unalived as well? Yo, it's mad. Mac B Music says, Hapman, have you seen the loyalty test videos? Most people cheat on that show. I haven't seen it, but I'm not surprised. I mean, men can do some foul things too, obviously. when it comes to like the foulest thing for me, which I've never understood, is these guys who have undercover relationships with like their friend's wife or their friend's girlfriend. Like, what the hell? Or even their brother's wife, like Ryan Giggs. That is so foul. Like, bro, a couple of my brothers are married. Yeah. I wouldn't even dream of trying to have an affair with my brother's wife. Like, it's so foul. It's like, what kind of what kind of sick individual must you be to be trying to smash your brother's wife? I don't get it, bro. I don't get what goes on in this world sometimes, man. It's mad. So for me, I don't like to touch any man's wife. Yeah, even if I don't know the guy. As soon as I know that the girl has got a man, I don't want to go there. I'm just old school like that. I just feel like it's unnecessary. It's just a horrible violation, and I don't want to encourage bad behavior. Yeah. So if I know that a girl's got a man, I just won't even go there. But if it was a friend's girl or wife, and I mean, come on, bro. And I have been come on to before by a friend's girlfriend. That has happened to me before. Did I reciprocate? Hell no. Hell no. Yes, Forge, we have covered the Conor Ben thing. You can see the statement from Conor Ben on the screen now. Taro said, yeah, meanwhile, all of the ography is about betraying your loved ones. Ever noticed that? Yeah, like sleeping with stepmom and all that weird stuff, all the fetish. Yeah. Ryan Giggs. What a foul individual. What a foul individual. I once smashed the chick, right? She was like a link back in the days. This chick I used to smash every now and then. And she told me that she cheated with her boyfriend with his cousin. Like, she went round to she was with her boyfriend and they went round to his cousin's house. And the boyfriend went out to the shop or something to get food for them. And while he was out of the shop, she got smashed by the cousin. Ah! That's how foul some of these people are. Unbelievable. I mean, the cousin's foul too, right? The cousin's even more foul than she was. What kind of cousin is that? Completely agree, Eamon. He says that's next level degeneracy. Yes, it is. That's exactly what it is. That's degeneracy. Mike Henry says the boyfriend and the cousin set it up. Maybe they did. Maybe the story she told me was BS. Maybe that wasn't her boyfriend at all. Maybe that was the guy that was just smashing her, and in her mind she remixed it that it was her boyfriend, but he didn't see it like that, and so he just passed her off to the cousin. It's possible. It's possible. Because some girls do weird stuff like that, you know. Like, there was some other girl that I smashed back in the days who was so dumb. She told me a story about being in a cab with her cousin, a female cousin, and some random guys they met on a night out who were trying to hit on them. And the female cousin was acting uninterested, stush. And she said, well, then the guy started talking to me and we hit it off right away and blah, blah, blah. Because my personality is so great. And I was like, wow, you really don't understand men, do you? It had nothing to do with your personalities. That has everything to do with your Zampas. Yeah? And the fact that a man on a night out is looking for the path of least resistance. So your cousin was his first choice. She shut him down. So he was like, well, let me try her. Let me try the other one then. Nothing to do with your personality. Unbelievable. And you know, when I told her that, she got mad at me. She got upset. What do you mean? You can't be that dumb. You can't be. You can't be that dumb to not know what was going on there. Yo. A man on a night out is looking for the path of least resistance. That's it. Wave says Conor Ben is getting rinsed on his social media. Has he lost the little bit of fans he had, Hatman? Time will tell. Conor Ben's fans don't come across as particularly bright to me. Them Essex lot, I'm not saying everybody in Essex is a dimwit, but with Conor Ben's fans, they're the kind of people that buy into all the sentimental nonsense that comes out of Eddie Hearn with regards to his relationship with Conor Ben. You know? All of that fake sentimentality and Conor's such a great guy, salt of the earth, and you know, all that rubbish. The people who buy into all that stuff are the Conor Ben fans, right? And so for them, yeah, it's going to be a huge deal if he leaves Eddie Hearn and signs to Zufa Boxing. It's going to turn their world upside down. But to most of us who are not part of that Essex crowd, we're not really shocked by it. We find it funny because we never bought into this idea that Conor Ben was this great, loyal guy and so principled. We never bought into that to begin with. Yeah, somebody asked who was Eddie Hearn's biggest star in the UK. It's got to be Ben Whittaker now, ain't it? If he's lost Conor Ben, it's got to be Ben Whittaker now. Well, AJ, should I say. It's AJ, but then Ben Whittaker. Yeah. There you go. The only way is Essex. That crowd. You've been tangoed, Tans. Vapid personalities. Benidorm, Turkey Teeth, etc., etc. Botox, BBLs. Jaden Ellis says Ben, aka Latino Heat. Yeah, you've been tangoed. Yeah. That's what I meant by saying you've been tangoed tans with the Essex crew. The Orange Man from the Tango adverts. But that helped kick off the happy slapping craze. I'm sure it did. The You've Been Tango adverts inspired happy slap. You guys remember happy slapping? The happy slap, when did that kick off? In the late 90s? Now, I'm sure it was the late 90s because I remember happy slapping when I was in college. And I was in college in the late 90s, and I remember happy slapping being a thing then. Funny G says, are BBLs popular in the UK or is this nonsense just an American thing? It's everywhere. It's in the UK. Maybe not as prevalent as it is in America, but it's definitely in the UK. Gumsy says happy slapping was about when that Nokia square phone I know the Nokia, it's not quite a square phone, it's like, I know the phone you're talking about. Yeah, like a teardrop almost shape, yeah. Well, there was this saying that people used to say before they slapped you. When I remember the happy slapping coming about, they would say, release the peace, release the peace. And they'd start saying release the peace before they slapped you. Release the peace. Yeah, BBLs do look bizarre because it gives a very unnatural figure. The legs are always like too thin for the butt. Some BBLs look really crazy, but I've never seen a BBL that looked anywhere near as good as the natural real thing. Even though I'm an action star, sometimes I might act bizarre. Tony S says, what promotional company do you think offered Johnny Bosch a big contract? So according to Hearn, it was basically an offer from whoever's promoting the Luke Partridge Matmadov fight. I think Netflix themselves might be promoting it. I'm not sure who's the official promoter on it. It might be Netflix themselves. But whoever's behind that show, according to Hearn, is the ones who offered Johnny Bosch a load of money for the TKV fight on the Partridge Matmadov undercard. And one says, I heard them BBLs be stinky as hell. I don't know, man. I stay away from all that. Action star. Well, yeah, Simon Jordan's from Croydon. Yeah, I remember when he got robbed in Croydon. And he didn't want to give up the watch. But yeah, Simon Jordan's from Croydon. Which is why he's so cool, or one of the reasons that he's so cool with Duke McKenzie and Adam Booth, because they're all from the same place. In fact, I'm not sure if Adam Booth is from Croydon specifically, but he's from somewhere in South London. But Duke McKenzie is obviously from Croydon. I know that Adam Booth and Simon Jordan went to the same school. Yeah, I can imagine Simon Jordan going back and forth with an armed robber. You know, some people who are not criminals, but they're like hardcore businessmen, they're brave, you know. Don't think that because somebody isn't a tough guy that they can't be brave. Yeah, a lot of them business type people, like self made millionaire business type guys, some of them are really brave. It's like Frank Warren, right? Frank Warren got popped and he weren't shook at all. Frank Warren's brave. Even though he's not a fighter, he's brave. Four Vibe says, why do you think Simon Jordan dyes his hair blonde? Was shocked he was ginger. Is he ginger? See, I didn't even know that. I didn't even know Simon Jordan was ginger. Fernie G says Vernon Forrest lost his life that way. R.I.P. Yeah, I remember that. Um, they tried to jack him and he chased them. He chased them, right? And then they shot him. Okay. Vibes Not Found says proper boxing exposed him as ginger. Okay. I mean, I don't see why being ginger is an issue, but it's still quite funny. Let me have a look here. So we're saying he's what, bleaching his hair to this day. Oh wow. Yeah, there he is. Okay. But in some of them, in some of them he don't really look. In this one here, he looks ginger. Is that actually Simon Jordan though? The thing I'm looking at. Maybe it is. Looks like him with short ginger hair. Um, but in other ones, it looks more like brown. So I don't know whether it's a trick of the light that he's ginger, or is it a Photoshop job? Because in some of them pictures where he's wearing the same jacket, he don't look ginger. These are from when he became the chairman of Crystal Palace. Some of them he don't look ginger. There might be a Photoshop job, you know, because I'm looking at this one here. He don't look ginger at all. But there's one where the cameras captured his face from the side and his hair looks fully ginger. So I don't know, man. Trick of the light. It's weird in the British Isles the way that being ginger is seen as a crime. That's something I never understood when me and my family moved to the UK in the 80s and we encountered this like ridicule of ginger people. I never understood it. I don't know what it's all about. It seems to be a thing that is uh, confined to the British Isles, right? Outside of the British Isles, do you find this mockery of ginger people outside of the British Isles? Because I'm not aware of it being a thing in America. Whereas in the British Isles, it's like, I don't know, man. People going on gingers for some reason. Because I remember uh, in the 80s hearing like young British boys when they were talking about girls they like, and they'd be taking the mick out of one of their friends saying, you like that ginger. She's ginger. Ridiculing one of their friends for fancying a ginger girl. It's as if she was a leper or something. Right? Joe says gingers have no souls. Eamon says some gingers be looking like albinos. Um, the gingers without freckles are the ones that almost have albino color skin. But the gingers that have freckles are not normally that pale. And so the gingers that have like really bright ginger hair, bright red hair, they're the ones that tend to be a lot more pale. Like that wrestler. Is he called Sheamus? See how pale he is? He's got like really bright ginger hair. The ones that have like darker ginger hair, yeah, they tend to have freckles and they're not as pale. WPW says, it's cool to be ginger now. 90s was tough times growing up. You got mocked for anything. You had to be on point. Yeah, 90s was like that. Even the 80s. And the mockery of gingers. I never understood it. It just seemed bizarre to me. Big up, is it Cueto? Big up, big up. Triple R says, I thought Ricky Hatton looked ginger when he was young, but looked like he had dark hair in later life. Well, you know, some people have got like brown hair but a ginger beard. Makhmadov is like that, right? Makhmadov's got brown hair but his beard is ginger. Kylie says, these days you have pop stars like Ed Sheeran, it's less of a thing. Yeah. Because there were certain things that people were stigmatized for back in the days, which aren't as much of a stigma today, I guess. We got Ali for the super chat. He says, I'm more tuned in for the Carl Froch versus John Fury on the undercard at Spurs Stadium, April 11th. The Cobra will take blood from his lungs and have him alive. Damn, that's vicious. Big up Ali. Well, if that fight happens, and I say if because it remains to be seen whether John Fury can be paid enough money to actually get him in a boxing ring. Because that guy is a liar, a pathological liar, a fantasist, and a narcissist. And he's nowhere near as tough as he thinks he is. Or let me remix that. He's nowhere near as tough as he wants people to think he is. Because I don't think John Fury believes that he's as tough as he says. Yeah? If he was, he would have fought Mickey Theo, he would have fought Dominic Negus, he would have fought everybody else that's called him out. Joe Egan. But he hasn't, right? So he's not as tough as he likes to make out. And therefore, it's a really big if whether he'll fight Carl Froch. They'll have to pay him an emperor's ransom, never mind a king's ransom, an emperor's ransom to get him in the ring. But if he does get in the ring with Carl Froch, yeah, he's going to get smashed to pieces. He's going to get absolutely smashed to pieces. Big up Ali for the super chat. I mean, the guy is 60. He's not in good shape. He was chinny in his prime and he couldn't punch in his prime. Okay, he's an actually bigger guy than Carl Froch, but not that much bigger. If you strip the fat away from him, I don't think that, I mean, there's a difference in size, but I don't think it's massive. I don't think it's any more than a natural 25 pounds or something, maybe. John Fury in his prime was in, I think, the 2 teens and 220s as a heavyweight. his last fight against Steve Garber, he might have been in the 230s or 40s, but he was, much heavier by then. But in his prime, let me look up John Fury's box rec here. And in Froch's prime, he would have been in the ring at what? 280? 285? Yeah, so a lot of John Fury's early fights, the weights are not listed. But for most of them, the weight is not actually listed. That's a curious thing. But when he fought a guy called David Hopkins, he was 221. He was 214 in the fight before the Akinwande fight. He weighed just 214 pounds. That's 15 stone 4 in English money. So you can see he was not a big heavyweight, really. It's only his last ever fight against Steve Garber, which was a rematch where he got knocked out in 4 rounds. That's when he weighed in at 244. But just 2 fights previous to that, he was 214. So if that fight goes ahead, yeah, Carl Froch is going to smash him to pieces. Big up Abraham, he says, Froch has stayed in great shape since retirement. Yeah, he has. Eamon says John Fury is a sad, sad individual. Well, he's afflicted with narcissism. John Fury really... narcissist is a massively overused term in this day and age, particularly by women constantly calling their exes narcissists. It's just ridiculous. And the definition of narcissist has changed so much, which I don't agree with, because it originally stems from the Greek myth about Narcissus, a man who fell in love with his own reflection. So basically, all a narcissist is somebody who's self-obsessed, right? Self-indulgent, self-obsessed. And that sums up John Fury perfectly, doesn't it? He's so self-obsessed and self-absorbed that he basically drives everyone away from him. Big up Ali, he says, what John did the other day was out of order. Oh yeah, massively out of order. Especially, I spoke about this earlier, sticking it on Steve Bunce like that, when Steve Bunce is basically a Fury fanboy. And this should be a warning to all fanboys out there. The person that you're fanboying over, they don't even respect you because of the fact you're a fanboy. It's kind of like police have, a police officer's job is to catch criminals, right? And in catching criminals, they often rely on informants. Yeah? As much as they rely on informants, police often don't respect informants because they're informants. It's kind of a weird thing, right? Even though the informants are helping the police still look down on them. And that's what it's like with the Furies. Even though they are benefiting from these sycophants, they look down on those sycophants too, like Steve Bunce. Dominic Avery says, and Buncey just lost his wife many weeks ago. Fury is sick. Yeah, John Fury really is sick. And as I said earlier on, John Fury put out this quote-unquote apology. But he didn't call Buncey up to apologize. He made some video. You see how it's all about public appearance and public perception for John Fury? If you sincerely meant that apology, you called a man up. But no, he does it on the internet. Mark Hatch says, Tyson bringing up Usyk's father was sick too. I didn't take it that way, personally. What I found more cynical from Fury is when he tried to say that he was inspired to come back because of the death of Cena and Latz, AJ's team members. That's what inspired him to come back, because you only live once and tomorrow's not promised and all this other stuff. He was planning to come back long before that incident happened. Right? He's just using that to try and play on people's emotions, to make them think, oh, he's such a great guy. That's what the Furies do. Particularly Tyson. You know, he loves doing all that. Trying to play on public emotion to get them behind him. That's why he always comes out with a Jesus talk. Trying to get the Christians behind him. I mean, he's one of the fakest Christians I've ever seen in my life. Partridge, unbelievably fake. When he starts doing all the Jesus talk, I'm like, oh my God. This guy's got no shame. Shout out to Ali for the super chat. He says, what I didn't like is he did this when Carl was making his Netflix broadcast debut. John just wanted to ruin it. It was pre-planned. That's an interesting take. It's an interesting take. Big up Ali for the super chat. I mean, it was obviously pre-planned, but, you know, the reason for it, it may be a multi-pronged motive, right? Not necessarily one reason, but perhaps several. Do I think Partridge's kids will be good boxers? Have you seen the size of them now? Well, history would suggest that they probably won't be, because the sons of good fighters normally don't turn out to be good. Who has quicker hands, Khan or Gary Russell? Definitely Gary Russell. Gary Russell Jr. has some of the fastest hands I've ever seen. Obviously, Khan a much bigger fighter, but yeah, Gary Russell's hands were ridiculous. Definitely faster than Khan's hands. But Khan, obviously crazy fast too. Ali says, Tyson Fury reminds me of how Obama used to placate African Americans, everything manufactured, insecure, and hyperbolic. Eamon says, why does Partridge have so many kids? Don't know, man. What else is there to do? Mac B says, Hatman, thoughts on the Ukrainian corner's work in the AJ Paul fight, good, bad, or need to see more? I'd say need to see more. Nothing struck me as bad from what I can remember. So I'd say need to see more. Luffy Jones says, Eddie Hearn said Joshua is expected to return in July. Yep. And I think the Partridge fight is going to happen this year. I do get that feeling it's going to happen this year. I reckon the fight will happen around November or December time. Big up James Lynch for the super chat. He says, who do you last longer in the ring with? Partridge, AJ, Dubois, or Wardley? Could you get past round 2 with any? And how would you do it? Okay, that's an interesting question. I think the Dubois fight would be the most difficult to survive the early rounds in. Just being real, because of the way Dubois comes at you. So that one will be the most difficult to survive the early rounds in. Then I would say the old version of AJ after that be second most difficult. Then Wardley, then Partridge. So I would say probably last the longest with Partridge. Got to get past 2 rounds. See, it's a difficult one to answer because my ego would tell me, yeah, of course I could. But the reality, it's really hard to gauge it and assess it. I'm going to say, yeah, I'll get past 2 with Partridge. But maybe my ego is doing way too much right now. I'm not talking about me now. I'm talking about me in my prime in my 20s. Big up James Lynch for the super chat. Interesting question. Definitely got me thinking about that one. Big up Copezilla. He says AJ had everything but couldn't utilize it all. Yeah, and that's the thing. You can have all the physical tools, but if you don't have the right mind, then those tools are not going to be used in the best way. Big up Copezilla. Big up Ali for the super chat. He says, Hammond, discuss the epic rematch tomorrow, sold out Nottingham Lee Wood versus Josh Warrington prediction time. And I'm glad you've brought that up, Ali, because that's the one thing I haven't yet talked about in this stream. And I did have it lined up to talk about, as you can see here. Lee Wood, Josh Warrington, rematch. It's a fight which could go either way, which we saw from the first fight, because Warrington was really giving Lee Wood the business, but then he got caught, and Lee Wood does tend to catch people. I'm going to say Warrington wins the fight this time and doesn't get caught. Obviously, I could be wrong. He got caught first time. He could get caught again. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he'll be able to stay out of the way. Obviously, both guys got beaten by Anthony Kakachi, but for me, Lee Wood took a worse beating, and he got stopped, obviously, by Kakachi. So, yeah, I'm going to go Warrington on points over Lee Wood. How about you, Ali? Who are you picking in this fight? Afro Jam says, I don't know about Epic. Them man are washed up. Okay. Luffy Jones says, my old coach was a sparring partner for Partridge and started weirdly salivating when explaining the dangers of his jab. That's a weird anecdote indeed. You know, Partridge has this hypnotic way about him as far as the people that he meets and encounters. He hypnotizes people. He gets them under his spell and they become part of his cult. So maybe your old coach got sucked in a little bit by that. But that is a very weird anecdote there, I'll tell you that. Just waiting for Ali to tell me his prediction for the Wood-Warrington rematch. I got Warrington on points. What say you? Yeah, we've spoken about Conor Ben quite a bit. Jumping ship to Zufa boxing. Whatever next. Kylie says, Partridge is very disarming in person, usually very jovial. Yeah, as I understand it, he is very jovial and very generous to the people that he meets. He'll buy them stuff and win their loyalty that way by being just gregarious and buying them things. Yeah, that's true. Why have they chosen this name Zufa? Does anyone know the origins of that name? Because apparently Dana White, when he originally wanted to be a boxing promoter, was going to name his company Zufa even then. Is it an acronym for something? Is it short for something? Like, what is Zufa? It is odd. It's interesting that he doesn't try to explain it more often. Ali says, Josh Warrington, but Lee should be a lot better. All right, so you're also picking Warrington, yep. Big up Ali for the super chat. Josh Warrington, aka Space Raider. And his head legitimately does look like a Space Raider. And shout out to the person who first noticed that, whoever that is. That Josh Warrington's head looks like a Space Raider. All right, peeps, gonna shut this one down. Been talking for a couple of hours now. What is it, 2 hours? Nearly 3 hours. Yep, this live will stay up. We haven't talked about anything too crazy. So I should be able to keep it up without getting zapped for copyright. Not copyright, excuse me. Zapped for whatever. Controversial content. I never use copyrighted stuff in these streams, but yeah, zapped for anything controversial. Zapped for monetization, that's what I meant to say. So yeah. Oh wow, okay. Phony G says Zufa is Italian and it means fight or scuffle. Alright. Learn something new every day. So yeah, shout out to everyone. Special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. They were, drum roll please, going to be a long drum roll. Just imagine a drum roll in your head. As I wait for my tab to refresh so I can actually read out these names. That's what the drum roll's about. Damn, this tab ain't reloading. Let me open a new one. All right, here we go. Yes, so the Sweet Maths, Ben Odom, United 927, Grizz, President Brush, Mr. Luca, Matt Borgerson, Vibes Not Found, Ali, Abraham, James Lynch, Copezilla, AMAC, big up AMAC, and also Stephen Pemberton with a super chat right at the end. Big up Stephen Pemberton and AMAC or AMAC, much appreciated. And yes, AMAC, we've been talking about the Conor Ben crazy news during this stream. So yeah, much appreciated both of you guys. All right. Perhaps I'll do another stream tomorrow, just talking the whole time about, and make it the lead topic, Conor Ben signing with Zufa Boxing. Especially if Eddie Hearn does some interviews in the meantime, then I can talk about the stuff he says in the interviews so we get more details and whatnot. So yeah, until then, take care, be good. Catch you guys on the other side. I'm out.